All right, guys. Alex Bianchi here with Minds of Tomorrow, episode 10. Today's guest is Dan Hepworth. He is a student at Duke University and he operates a tutoring business. So, Dan, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Alex? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm good. So, do you just want to do a little bit of an introduction, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure thing. So a little background on myself. I'm from Long Island, New York, in particular, Massapequa Park. So I know a good bagel and a good pizza, and I'm back on break, and I miss those dearly. I'm a sophomore at Duke University, and uh, majoring in computer science and finance there. And what I spend a lot of my time on is running the Massapequa Tutor, which is my company that I started in high school. I started that in 2016 when I was a junior in high school, and that began as a very small project with just myself tutoring. It began with just one person that I was working with, as a friend of a family friend, so no one I knew directly. Um, they sought my help for geometry. I decided to give it a shot, and it was the best decision I ever made. And then jumped to now, and we're a team of over 30 people working with nearly 300 clients across not only Long Island but across the nation, as we have people reaching out to us from Florida and Texas and the Raleigh Durham area near my university.
That's awesome. So, you kind of covered how you got into tutoring, and I'm assuming you were an A plus plus student throughout
Um,
school.
since high school, in middle school, I was a bit of a slacker. Middle school, I guess for me, my definition of slacking was a 95 or a 94. But going to high school really pushed me. My high school was a really competitive high school, and what they had was they had a board in the main lobby. So when you walked up these big stairs, you saw a board with everyone's name on the honor roll with their GPA. So it was like blah 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 100, a couple of names 99. And after the first trimester, which is the marking periods of my high school, I got a 97, and that's a great grade. Don't get me wrong, but I saw my name on this board and it was in the bottom left. There was about 20 or 30 names above me. And ever since that first marking period, my motivation was to be at the top of that board. And I pretty much did just that. I was consistently within the top 5 or 10, and being in such a competitive environment really pushed me to new highs. So I wasn't always an A plus student, but I definitely got a knack for academics and started really working hard in high school and continued that in college.
That's amazing. That is totally different than me. I am BC's like chilling there. Um, mostly B's, but I my story is actually I'm part of a dual enrollment program, so I am 2 years ahead in school. So I'll graduate college in 2 years, and
Oh wow.
I kind of got into that program because I was tippy top of my class my freshman year, and then I was and I don't like school. It's not for me. So once I got into that program, I kind of just coasted through. But I've because of the nature of the program, I was always in classes with AP classes my freshman sophomore year. So I was always with top of the class people. So I've been surrounded by your personality type, I guess you could say, or just
Hmm.
you know what I mean. I've been surrounded by the top of the class for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
that's pretty cool. So tell me more. You'll be graduating college with 2 years of credits, or going into college with 2 years of credits?
yeah, so this year I'm a senior in high school and a sophomore in college. So depending on the school I go to, TC&J and Seton Hall will both take all of
Mhm.
my credits, and I'll graduate there in 2 years.
That's very economical.
Yeah, it is for sure. Because it's Brookdale, which is a community college too. So
Mhm.
I've gotten the first 2 years for like 5 grand, and then because of the nature of my program, it's very impressive and other things that I have done in high school. Seton Hall gave me $100,000, and we're expecting almost a full ride from
Oh, that's awesome.
TC&J.
Congrats. One of our tutors also recently committed to Seton Hall. So if you end up going there, I'd be happy to make an introduction.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just there yesterday. It's a beautiful campus. It's a nice school. I'm not married. I'm actually not married to going to college quite yet. I'm looking at potential job opportunities in the marketing realm, but as of now, that's the route.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like you have a lot of great options.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so you started the tutoring business, and then what? You had your first customer. What did it look like in those early stages of the business with the second, third, fourth, right when you started to scale it in the early parts there?
Yeah, so I can definitely talk about that. In the beginning, it was very small and very informal. So um, back then, our first couple of people, it was all cash in hand. The first couple of people were really referral based. I think tutoring is a very relationship based business. So word of mouth is really the catalyst at the very beginning. And I decided to capitalize on that by forming a Facebook and an Instagram page, which I ran at the time. And back then it was very, very ad hoc. I don't really have any creative skills. In fact, I'm colorblind, and art is my worst class in high school. So it was pretty much like clip art, stock images, and text Facebook posts, which looked gross and ugly. But somehow that still captured the attention of a lot of people. So using those routes was initially how we gained traction, and then as we grew, we spent more time into our branding as well as the processes that allowed us to scale. So it was initially a very solo venture where it was me doing all the tutoring and running the show until 2018, and at that point I was a senior in high school, and it got to the point where I was tutoring 8 or 9 hours a day in a library without time for lunch or dinner, literally eating granola bars and hoping no one had a peanut allergy. And that was sort of the impetus that I need to bring people on to expand our mission. So at that point, when I was a senior, I brought on several high achieving classmates of mine to work with me, and that allowed us to expand our outreach substantially. And then following that spring, that fall of 2018, I was a freshman at Duke, and that's when we started to run this remotely. And I realized that as a college student, I wouldn't be able to work with the 50 or 75 or so clients I had at the time because they wanted someone in person who was there and available, which I was not. So I decided to bring people on remotely. And that process again looked very informal to begin with. It was initially an iMessage group chat with 3 or 4 high school seniors that I knew. All of the payments went through Venmo and cash, and it was very informal. But we initially we took that and then we developed that into more formal processes through switching to PayPal later on, switching to Slack for our communications, and just taking steps to have the systems in place that allowed us to scale and finding excellent people to grow with us.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Might I recommend QuickBooks if you haven't checked it out?
Oh, of course.
That's a great way
Yeah.
to handle a lot of that stuff, especially in the early stages. That's what I've used before. I did a little tech business. I was fixing computers my sophomore year. I used that. That was very nice.
Mhm.
So so when you went to college, that's when you realized the need for scaling. That's for proper business structure.
Yeah, in particular the spring. So the fall it was sort of still going on in a very informal manner with Venmo and stuff. Um, the spring semester, so early 2019, is when I really began to take this seriously. It actually was fueled from rejection. I got rejected from this organization on campus, and I realized, I don't need them. I have something great. Let me put all my energy, my heart and soul into making this thing that I'm a part of the best it can be. And at that point, we really, focused on making a great organization that was allowed that had the infrastructure to scale. So the spring of 2019 is when we made our website. That's when we started building a team, having like a formal application process. Because very initially our hiring was very ad hoc. It was just like I would talk to someone, I'd be like, yeah, they're a smart kid, they can work with me. But having the processes in place was really essential, and a lot of that business development really started the spring of 2019.
Awesome. Would you say that starting this business helped you get into Duke, or did you leverage that at all in your application process?
Yeah, definitely. I think that was a key part of my application. I think that on a bigger picture, my application told a story about tutoring where, this isn't the only tutoring that I did at the time. I did a lot of volunteer tutoring in high school. I was a peer tutor for the Spanish club. I was a founding member of the peer tutoring club at my high school where upperclassmen took their study hall time to work with students. I did volunteer tutoring in New York City for a volunteer organization. So it was really something that I did across the board, and this definitely helped with that. And I definitely mentioned that on my application, and I hope that colleges saw interest in that. I think it was definitely one of the bigger things that I was involved with as a high schooler.
All right, that's awesome. So, obviously, I'm sure you've gotten this a lot, but very busy. Lots of moving pieces, and I respect that. I totally understand that life. That's how I live too, balancing business and work and college programs and all of that. So, what have you found helps you balance all of these moving pieces, whether it be high school, college, different aspects for different educational environments? Just what makes you function?
hmm Um, I'll give you the short answer and the long answer. The short answer is a lot of caffeine. Um, the long answer is it's a very difficult balance. Oftentimes running the business is that conflict with academics where, for example, I would have two assignments due on a Friday, but I would also have a lot of calls and meetings I have to take care of on Thursday, which would delay that. So oftentimes the two are at conflict. So it's all about to one extent, it's a lot of delegation. As a leader, you need to delegate tasks to people. Um, uh, when you hear the title CEO, a common misnomer is chief everything officer, but bad CEOs are chief everything officers. I think the best CEOs are those that can delegate tasks and then place trust in their leaders to execute on those. So having a lot of delegation and having great people to work with has been critical. I would say, constantly being reminded of our mission and our motivation has kept me going through some very tough times and very sleep deprived days. What I say fuels me is what I call the aha moment. We talk about that a little bit on our website and a little bit in my backstory. But when a student comes to us for a lesson and doesn't understand something, whether it's geometric proofs, and then by the end they achieve a higher level understanding, there's a certain moment, a very small instance in time where that concept clicks, and that's what we call the aha moment, because the student will often literally go, aha, finally. And it's a great feeling, especially when you're actually in the session and that happens. And while I don't really spend too much time on the ground tutoring, unfortunately, it's great to see that impact that we have from people continually working with us, and the great feedback we get from our clients about the confidence that we're increasing in their students and the results we receive. The way I put it very crassly is that the aha moment is pretty much like a drug. It fuels me through a lot of tough times and seeing those great results. So being reminded of why we do things and keeping me grounded has been essential as well. And also, I would say having some people to blow off steam with. Having some friends at Duke that I can really hang out with and let loose with, as well as also people who are going through similar things. So I'm part of a program at Duke called the Student Founders Program, which is a bunch of other entrepreneurs that meet on a weekly basis for mentorship and kind of just to have a community. So people who are going through the same struggles, that's been very helpful as well. So those are a couple of ways that I've been able to manage it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think what you mentioned about the aha moment is important. I've been working with this in my personal goal setting because I'm very well read, especially a bunch of self-help books that are kind of easy reads, so I'll just tear through them.
Any book recommendations? I'm trying to read a lot more.
Yes, the subtle art of not giving a fuck, I think, is a must read for anybody
I've heard
in
about that. I
Generation
need to
Z.
get that on my library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're obviously a smart kid, so if you're interested in philosophy, particularly existentialism, then that book and the sequel, Everything is Fucked, are great reads.
That sounds rather nihilist.
Yeah. That, and then also the 7 Habits. My dog actually ate it the other day, so I don't have it on my shelf. But the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is the book that I read in the 8th grade, and I recently reread it, and I didn't realize how much of the book subconsciously became ingrained in the way I function, because I read it at a prepubescent age. So like my brain was just starting to develop, and I read this book with all these grand concepts, and now I look back and I realize that I was really able to like infuse those concepts into my core, and it's great for productivity and happiness. So definitely those books. But back to the aha moment, I think setting goals with intent is super important, because it's really easy to say with my YouTube channel, say, okay, by the end of the summer, by the end of the year, I want 1,000 subscribers, or I want to produce X videos a week, or if you want an A+, but it's, why do you want that? I want it because I want to spread this message of young entrepreneurship, and everything isn't fucked for Generation Z individuals. Like, there's hope in this world. I feel like everyone's going through a existential crisis at our age. And you can see that, particularly The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, that book mentions it, how a lot of people are kind of hopeless and aimless right now. So that's why I want that goal. I want to work out because I want to look a certain way, and reminding yourself of that is super important. It's almost like in the down moments where you're not going to do your task, reminding yourself why is more important than reminding yourself of the goal.
Yeah, it's simply intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And that's something we talk a lot with our clients because I think a lot of students are extrinsically motivated. Why do students do well in class? Because they want to get into a good school or make a lot of money, or even more crassly, I don't want to get in trouble by my parents, or I don't want to get yelled at, or I don't want to suffer through summer school. So I think I definitely try and internalize intrinsic motivation with our students, whether it be, doing the best you can, simply, doing your personal best is an intrinsic motivation, or doing well in the subject for the sake of learning and the sake of mastery, learning for the sake of learning, which is very uncommon nowadays, but finding really important things that'll pull you. I think that's critical to success.
Mm-hmm. While I get reminded of it, this book is particularly applicable to The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He's a phenomenal author and big in the podcast world right now. He talks about turning your businesses and it's a lot about business delegation. There's a lot to the book. A big portion of it is delegating things in your business, and that seems particularly applicable to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly, and I have a couple recommendations as well. I just bought 2 books on Amazon that should be being shipped to my home today. One of which I got a recommendation from one of my mentors. It's called E-Myth. It's called The E-Myth Revisited: Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It, as well as another by another one of my mentors called Traction: Get a Grip on Your Business. I can send you the links if you would like, but 2 great books on how to think in a more business-minded way. I also just finished a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which I think is like a textbook for life and something that I want to read not just once but multiple times to really internalize those habits on people skills, because I think that people skills are on the decline now with technology, and people can definitely have the technical skills of being able to code or film videos, but if they can't communicate with people their desires in a feasible way, then that'll definitely inhibit your acceleration and your growth.
For sure. How to Win Friends and Influence People is a phenomenal book. I listened to it for the first time in audiobook. I was landscaping. Back when I used to landscape, I was working 60 hours a week, but the big pro to it was nobody talked to me. I could put my headphones on, which were noise blocking, so my ears didn't get shot. But I would listen to books, and listening to How to Win Friends and Influence People was the book that gave me the most just like stop what I'm doing, pause the audiobook, and think for like 5 minutes of what it just said. So I like that a lot, and I've been meaning to go back to it. So I'll definitely.
It's really a textbook. You want to read it multiple times. I was actually borrowing a copy from my friend, but I want to get a copy of my own so I can refer to it, highlight it, and really.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Did it get cut off at some point?
You froze and then it.
Yeah, I think I said you left or I left. So I guess we're talking about how to win friends and influence people.
Mm-hmm. You there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, great book. I don't know how much. We can. I'm sure the two of us could gloat about books for the entire podcast. But kind of shifting away from that, what has the Ivy League school been like for you? Almost removing the business aspect for it. If you were to just zone in on what it's like to be in Duke, such a prestigious university, what's that experience been like as opposed to upper tier universities, mid, lower tier? Like, where does Duke's and other Ivy League schools' strengths come in?
Yeah, Duke isn't an Ivy League actually, but we definitely call ourselves Harvard of the North. Or actually, typically what we say is Harvard is the Duke of the North. So we're not an Ivy League, although we're ranked higher than a couple of them. Not to brag, but generally speaking, going to a school that's a top 10 or I think it's like top 9 or top 8 school, it has a lot of pros and cons. It's not a wonderland. The academics are definitely pretty tough, so you got to be willing to work, and that's for any major, whether it's the humanities, you're writing 20-page papers, or STEM, computer science, or we have projects that can take hours upon hours. That's one thing. But the people there, the resources you have are amazing, to put it bluntly. The faculty that I've been able to interact with are leaders and experts in their field, from economists with Harvard PhDs to people in our finance department who have experience on the trading floor at some of the top firms, to my computer science professor last semester, who was probably the smartest guy I ever met. This professor has a professorship in like 5 different departments, like the medical school, the bio department, the comp sci department, and he has a lab named after him, and he runs a biotech company concurrently with his professorship. So you meet some really great people. The alumni network is another thing. The Duke alumni network has been very helpful and has some incredible people. Like yesterday, for example, I was talking with the CEO of Kaplan, obviously a very international tutoring company, because the CEO is a Duke alum, and he was happy to talk with me just to get some advice and mentorship and learn from his experiences. And the people there, the students are obviously very driven people. Everyone's very passionate about something, whether it's a company they're working on or a nonprofit or just some aspect of the world that really intrigues them. I will say the drawback, though, is also the people, in the sense that everyone's very cutthroat. It's very easy to get into a sense of comparing yourself to others and becoming disheartened by that. So with such talented people comes a bit of a drawback, in the sense that we're always stressed. There's always a compulsion to be busy, so it's very tough to blow off steam and truly unwind. So it's definitely a bit of a pressure cooker, but a lot of great opportunities that don't replicate themselves in many other places.
That's amazing. Yeah, I applied to Princeton, which is a bit of a long shot, mainly because of my grades. It's every other aspect of my application is perfect, except I never tried on my grades, which could, in hindsight, be seen as a mistake, but I don't particularly operate that way. But that is amazing for kids listening to this that might be considering that path. Just to hear that perspective from a student who's currently in the trenches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that has its pros and cons. It's not all puppies and rainbows and unicorns, but I think there are benefits to also being a big fish in a small pond. Just being the valedictorian of your local state school. That could be good to just have that confidence of knowing you're one of the smartest people in the room. And so it definitely has its pros and cons. So I encourage people to be very cognizant about how they think about schools. One of my regrets is making a very superficial college decision. I was between Duke, Georgetown, and UVA, and pretty much the only way the I guess the deciding factor was U.S. News. Duke was the highest ranked of those 3 schools, and it's very superficial, but that was pretty much the only thing that I decided on. Like, they were all beautiful schools. It was very tough to differentiate, whether I would have enjoyed myself more at Georgetown or UVA. So I encourage people to really think beyond just the prestige and think how they would enjoy their time there, because it's really, it's college is one of the biggest investments out there. It's $280,000 tops. It's probably the biggest expense your family will be investing in aside from their home. And it's not only a place where you'll be studying for 4 years, but living and meeting lifelong friends and future employers. So really think it through and do as much due diligence as you can.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Speaking of future employers, what's your plan once you get out of Duke? I guess start off with what's your major? Why did you pick that major?
Mm-hmm.
And then transition then to how it affects your business.
Yeah, so I'm a major in computer science and I minor in finance. I get a lot of questions about that. Dan, why didn't you major in business? Part of it's because I can't. Duke actually doesn't have a business major in the undergraduate school. So typically, what people do who are trying to go into the typical business careers of like investment banking or consulting or corporate finance is they major in economics or public policy or get the finance minor, or they go for the markets and management certificate, which is pretty popular here. But there's no business major. The reason I chose comp sci is for a couple of reasons. One of which is that I never had the opportunity to code in high school, so I thought it was a cool opportunity to learn. I think it's an essential skill. Mark Zuckerberg I believe he says that everyone should learn how to code. It's like a language. And I think that it has a lot of use in every industry. Every industry is facing automation to some extent, whether it's the food service industry with kiosks at McDonald's or, Amazon now having retail stores with no people necessary to run it. But I think coding and having an understanding of technology in today's society is essential. But bigger than that, I would say the mindset that it teaches you is even more empowering. Computer science, it's not just coding, but it's understanding how computers work at a very low level and at a very high level. And in particular, one of the things you always focus on is efficiency. You're given a very limited set of resources, a finite amount of memory and a finite amount of runtime to execute certain tasks. and it's all about delivering efficiency. So we spend a lot of our time not only writing code but also analyzing that code. How efficient is it? How does it optimize the runtime? And what constraints are necessary to make this run? And I think that having that mindset of efficiency and thinking algorithmically as to what patterns I can identify and iterate on, I think that's a skill that is applicable to, again, a lot of different fields, in particular the business field, because with business, you're making a lot of processes, which are very similar to writing code. You're doing tasks on a repeated basis, and you want to do so in the most efficient way because as a business, you have a very finite amount of resources in terms of people, in terms of capital, and in terms of time. So I think having the mindset of a programmer and a computer scientist translates well into business. And when it comes to my long range plan, initially I came in pretty set on finance. I want to be an investment banker and work at Goldman Sachs. But I realized a couple of things, and one is that investment banking is a lot of work. The typical week is anywhere between 60 to 100 hours, so you barely see your apartment. You're pretty much always in the office, and when you're not, you're sleeping. And what I also realized is that I enjoy running my company a lot more. So my dream is to run it full time in some iteration, and pursue that as a full time venture, either after graduation or maybe before graduation. Maybe things will work in such a way that I can take some time off of college and really pursue this. Time will tell. But I envision, running my company as a full time career.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's the goal. That's my personal goal, honestly, is to be able to be running my business as soon as possible. Part of that is, well, starting the business definitely helps. I'm currently in the research phase for a lot of digital marketing things. I have an internship opportunity, few internship opportunities that I'm deciding between right now. VaynerMedia is probably the biggest one.
Have you had any luck with that? I remember I found out about you through your TikTok that I want to intern with Gary V.
Yeah. So I D-Rock. Do you follow Gary at all?
A bit. I think D-Rock is what, his personal assistant or one of his
It's his
right hand guys.
head videographer, head of
Mhm.
Team Gary, personal assistant, his right hand man.
Okay.
So D-Rock responded to one of my emails on Saturday. He CC'd a couple of other people from Team Gary and said we should connect sometime this week. I said, awesome, let me know when you can make that happen. And I haven't heard back from him, which is a little bit concerning, but I also know that they're incredibly busy individuals, and in the end of the
Mhm.
day, my random internship that I've been a pain in their ass about isn't on the top of their priority list. So my expectation is that I won't get a response, and then tomorrow I'll follow up. If they don't respond to that, then I'll just restart the initiative from the TikTok because it worked once. I'll make it work
Mhm.
again. That's kind of the goal right now. If that comes to fruition, particularly VaynerMedia, I'd be incredibly open to taking on a job there at the end of the internship if it's an opportunity, because I'm assuming they don't offer jobs to just every single intern that comes
Mhm.
through. But if I can work my ass off enough and make a big enough difference, I would definitely do that over college, and then hopefully spend a couple years there, learn, shake a bunch of hands, make a bunch of connections, and then hop off and do my own thing or start my side hustle while I'm in there. And the same kind of philosophy applies towards smaller internship opportunities at more local digital marketing agencies that I've interviewed with. So yeah, it's there
Great.
are options,
Yeah.
but the goal is to have my own business. Currently, that's in the marketing realm. Eventually, I want to be B2C, and obviously, marketing is very B2B. But the thinking behind that is the skills that I will acquire in running a marketing business will apply to any business that I ever start. And I like marketing, so as long as I'm in that, I use that to make money, grow, make mistakes, and then I jump over to whatever my product or B2C service is, then not too much gets lost.
Yeah, I want to say two things on that. And first off is definitely be persistent, and to put it crassly, don't don't feel bad about being a pain in the ass. If you keep on showing your interest, things will pop up. And I always tell people to never underestimate the power of cold emails and cold contacting. I use LinkedIn a lot, probably too much. But I've had some excellent opportunities that came out. Like, I was telling you about the CEO of Kaplan. Pretty much, I found his profile on LinkedIn. I connected with him and I gave him a personal message saying, "Hey, Andy, I'm a Duke alum. Not a Duke alum. I'm a Duke student. I saw you're a Duke alum. I would love to find some phone time to chat and learn more about Cap One and see if you can be a mentor of mine. Um, and surprisingly, he responded, and I got on his calendar within 2 weeks. I also I did the same exact strategy to get in touch with one of the co-founders of Naviance. Are you familiar with Naviance? It's the college search data company. Um, and he's actually not even a Duke alum, which is even more surprising. But I pretty much messaged this guy Steven on LinkedIn, and I was like, "Hey, my name is Dan. I'm a Duke entrepreneur. I want to learn more about Naviance. I would love to find some time to chat." And within a day, he responded, "Yeah." And then I was like, I sent him a follow up email, and we were like, we got on his calendar, and I chatted with him yesterday. So don't underestimate the power of cold emails, and be sure to follow up consistently with people. I think a good sort of barometer for not being too annoying is once a week until you get an answer, and just keep on doing it. Keep on rising to the top of their inbox, and eventually something will come of it. Um, and then when it comes to what you mentioned about starting B2B and then going B2C, I think that in pretty much every industry, people are trying to get what I call their street cred. A lot of people start off in careers they don't like to gain experience and credibility for future ventures. Um, for example, a lot of people I know go into careers in business, whether it's investment banking or consulting, for a short term, 2 or 3 years, and then they use that experience then to run their own business and have some experience before going to investors or starting their own company. Definitely, don't be patient and don't hesitate to take it slow and find your street cred.
Yeah, for sure. No, you just said pretty much exactly what my current action plan is. I think that a mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs our age, because you're how old are you? I'm sorry.
19.
19, yeah, so I'm 18, so our age. A lot of them are in a rush, and I kind of come from this perspective of I am incredibly young. I am a fit, young teenage boy with so much time ahead of him at the current average lifespan, let alone what decades of technological advancement are going to allow me to do. So I'm willing to spend 4, 5, 6 years, however long it takes, until I'm confident that I will be able to start my business and make it a thing, instead of like you see kids drop shipping or running Facebook ads for small businesses, which both can be perfectly good ventures if you do them right. So yeah, I definitely understand the patience route, and I think it's a big mistake that a lot of kids are making our age, is not being patient.
I would say to the contrary, there's still some sort of time pressure. The thing being that as you age, your obligations increase. So, right now, if I was to drop out of college and run my company full time, uh, if I ask the question, what's the worst that could happen is, say my company goes to shit, I can go back to school, finish my degree, and, get a typical corporate job and kind of start fresh. Well, let's say 20 years down the line, I'm an established, businessman, whether it's in investment banking or consulting or whatever. At that time, I have a lot more obligations and a lot more risks. If I'm quitting my job to start a company, then I have a mortgage on a house or rent that has to be paid, potentially a family that needs food on the table, a lot of other obligations. So I'm a big proponent of Jeff Bezos's regret minimization framework. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. This sounds interesting though.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you to look it up further. Sort of the TLDR is that the goal is to minimize your regrets and minimize the opportunity cost. And the reason being is that you don't want to regret something when you're 80 or 90 and on your deathbed. And that's the common thing, that a very common trend is, when people are, on the verge of dying, they regret not doing things. And if you're an established businessman, you're working, consulting or banking, whatever, I don't want to regret not capitalizing on this opportunity. And right now is the prime time to take that opportunity, because the cost of doing so is so minimal. I'm a big fan of the question, what's the worst that could happen? And right now that answer is very small. But 10 years down the line, what's the worst that can happen can mean, being evicted from my apartment or not having a future job to return to. So it's all about timing it right too. And I think that more risks can be taken at a younger age than an older age.
Yeah, for sure. There's a YouTuber that I follow, Graham Stephan, who is basically, and Gary Vaynerchuk for this matter, and it's the like 20s or times is the time to take risks, because you're not going to be able to do it later on. When I say I'm willing to wait, I mean I'm willing to wait like mid 20s or preferably younger. I'm not talking super far in advance, because I have goals for ages that are astronomical, which I think is good from a goal setting mindset. So I simultaneously impose pressure on myself to act fast and efficiently, but at the same time understand that patience is key. There's a balance there to be had,
Yeah,
but I
definitely
think
a balance.
yeah, but I think you and I are seeing eye to eye on it. Yeah, like I've been particularly blessed with the what's the worst that can happen. Like for me, already having a 2-year degree, what's the worst that can happen? My family has a restaurant that I already am an assistant manager at, so I can just be a full time manager, and that's already a decent gig. But removing my family from the situation, I already have a 2-year diploma, so I can just transfer to any of the decent universities near me, Rutgers, TC and J.
Mhm. You're from
And
Jersey?
yeah, I'm from Jersey,
What part of Jersey?
Monmouth County,
Okay.
the shore area. I'm like Belmar Wall Township. I don't know if you know those.
I know a couple of schools in Jersey. I did speech and debate in high school, so Basking Ridge, Princeton, obviously, a couple others. Yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah, so I kind of have like a million backup plans, and then but the one goal that I actually want to achieve is this YouTube and entrepreneurship. So I'm I'm going there full force.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned backup plans. That's something I'm sort of contemplating as well because I also have a lot of backup options. You know, like I mentioned, I can go back to school or I can get a degree and go into a typical business career of some sort, like most students do, or software engineering. But I find it difficult to really think about Plan B too much because then that kind of like sets your mind up for failure. Where it's like I'm not going to try because worst comes to worst, I can work at my parents' restaurant, or worst comes to worst, I can find a consulting gig. So I find it very difficult to kind of resolve that and go full throttle on Plan A, and at the same time have backup plans. It's a very difficult balance where you want to naturally keep options open, but at the same time, I think the more you think about Plan B, the more you're incentivizing your mind to consider the option of failure when really you should only be thinking about success and have a relentless optimism.
For sure. Yeah, I love seeing different motivational speaker entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, online. Some of them are like it's okay to have a plan B. Some of them say burn your bridges, burn the boat. Like no plan B's, no turning back. I
That
think
reminds me of do you watch The Office?
I've seen some of it.
There was like where Andy Bernard like quits his job. He um like breaks someone's car window or something and quits the office so he can like go on a recital for like American Idol because he was like a big music guy. He was like, yeah, burning all my bridges, and like he like quits Dunder Mifflin, like severs all of his ties there. That's just what that reminded me of.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with Plan B. I think it's all mentality and it's all perspective. I just there's the fact that we've been in such a long, although until the past couple of days, such a long bull market. We have so much money in the market right now, and it's very easy for people to say like, burn your bridges, pursue your entrepreneurial venture at all costs, without really the perspective of like, no, things can go wrong. Like that does happen. So we'll see. I think the next 5 years are going to be very interesting for me, for the world, really, where a lot of things play out. So it'll all work itself out. I have faith that
Yeah,
we'll be
it's,
able to get it going
it's an exciting time for the both of us and for the world around us.
for sure. Yeah. So finishing it off here. What's Duke said about coronavirus? Have they talked about it at all?
They sent out a letter. They have a plan for quarantine. So if you're traveling to certain high risk areas, I believe Iran, Italy, and China are a couple of those, you have to quarantine yourself at one of the old dorms, which became a quarantine zone upon returning from spring break. But I believe there might be some changes to that in the near future. So a lot of other universities either canceled class or went virtual. Harvard, I think, announced the cancellation today. Columbia went virtual, I think, yesterday. Hofstra as well. So I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would put my money on Duke either canceling classes or going virtual because right now we're on spring break. So hopefully I can stay back and hang out in Long Island a couple more days. But I think the reality is that they'll probably cancel classes out of a precautionary measure.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. A couple schools in New Jersey just have either shut down or have shut down for like a day to prepare for quarantine. I don't know what that means. I don't know what a high
Mhm.
school can do with a day off um, to prepare to quarantine. Like, are they putting iron bars on the windows? What's the
Mhm.
doomsday scenario here? But I want to. I'm very interested to see where this all plays out. My mom was on a White House call through her work. She's a vice president for of communications for a lobbying group for small businesses, so she gets access to a bunch of stuff. She
Mhm.
said that the tone of the White House went from really confident one week to really concerned, like don't have large public things. There's like really precautionary the next. So we'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah, we're watching it very closely. We actually just yesterday announced that all of our tutoring sessions will be going virtual for the time being as a precautionary measure. So we're watching this very closely, and our attitude is this: we want to hope for the best. Hopefully, that this resolves itself in a couple of weeks, but at the same time, prepare for the worst, as the safety of our clients and our tutors is our utmost priority.
Yeah, for sure. I did an interview at Seton Hall yesterday for their honors program, and they wouldn't shake my hand. They said that Seton Hall said no shaking hands,
Hmm.
um, as precautionary measure. But yeah, no, I like shutting the podcast off with some current events talk, just some random stuff like that. So if you have any parting thoughts, then you can say those now. Point people to your website if they're interested. If you serve the Monmouth County area or anything like that, and then I'll do my thing and we can get going.
Yeah, so thank you for hosting. I just encourage people to pursue their passion. Um, Make sure to like we were talking about, be patient, but also really push yourself. Um, and we do work in the Monmouth County area. We work virtually across the nation. So if you want help with tutoring or want to become a tutor, be sure to check out our website. That's the MassapequaTutor.com. I'm sure you put that in the description because nobody outside of Long Island knows how to spell Massapequa. We also have an Instagram, a LinkedIn, a Facebook, and a Twitter. So we can definitely get those links out there. But I'd be happy to talk with anyone, whether it's about tutoring, about advice about colleges, or even just advice about life, or if you want to become a tutor. I'm a pretty open book. I love meeting new people, so don't hesitate to reach out to me.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I'll definitely put all that stuff in the description. I can find it all relatively easily. If there's any special link you want me to put down, then just send it over on Instagram. And guys, that's gonna be it for this episode of Mindset Tomorrow. Comment down below what you think. If you have any questions for me or Dan, then I can send them over his way, or he can check out the comment section. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. Peace.
Thanks.